So, this is a weird one for me because I've heard this talked about multiple times, and I find that the layman's answer is not wonderfully great. But the true answer that a lot of physicists, astrophysicists, quantum physicists, all that, they really thought about it, which true is stranger than fiction. I like that particular answer. Like the truth is stranger than fiction. So what we're talking about is the center of the universe. Right? We want to talk about that. Right? The true center. Right? And it's like, well, there isn't one because that's the layman's. Right? Like the layman's answer is like that. Right? But the true answer is that there is, technically speaking, a way to find that. And there is, technically speaking, if you let me finish, a gravitational center right now. Right? So a gravitational center is different. There's mass every which way, everywhere else, that equals out to being where there is a center that equals nil. It's like where everything else seems to overall have equidistant, or whatever else you want to call it. It's gravity. Mass relative to this point. Now, from that, you can go backwards because it's like a singularity to us is weird. Okay, like this is the paradoxical thing. All right. So, like, the paradoxical turns into, well, everything expanded from this central point. But it's like, it's singularity. But of course it expanded, and of course there's distance here. That means there's a center. I don't care what you fucking say. There's a center. If you want to go with it's a central ball, whatever the fuck, it doesn't matter. There's a center, right? But it's like, right, that's relative to us. Like a Planck link to us is how we measure now. If you go backwards in time as a shrunk, of course, to its relative point in time and space, which isn't really technically something that we consider with an outside, which is the problem with astrophysics, right? Like, there's an outside that equals something. There's something there, whatever it is. Nothing, this, that, whatever. It could be anything. Right? Then it turns into what now? Well, relative to its size and point in time and space, that means there's a distance. Now, the closer and closer you get, and it's like, right, but everything shrank. And relative scale shrank, right? To us. To it, not so much, right? Like, that's the point. That's the paradoxical point. That means you can always keep zooming in. That's why they use this recursive style of math, which I don't particularly like. I'm not a big fan of recursives very often. That means essentially you can keep zooming in and nothing will ever look like there's a center. And yet, if you look at any screen, you'll notice that there's a center of any given recursive fucking fractal. Yes, but that's besides the point. And then get multiple dimensions, and I move it around, and blah, 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 blah. Still center. There's still a center. I mean, if you want to get semantic, pedantic about it, right? But it's like, right. But that's science. That's math. That's engineering. That's physics. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to get semantic about it, the answer is there is a theoretical center. There has to be a theoretical center. It's just really hard to fucking find it. And nobody really ever wants to find that. Because it, technically speaking, shouldn't exist. And yet, black holes have a center. Yet, the universe is going to have a center. Doesn't matter if you don't like it. It's still going to have a center. You have to work it back. You have to work out all the gravity. You have to work out all the things. And there should theoretically be a center point. Should the Big Bang hold true? If it doesn't, and we just spring forth like a causal set theory might suggest, meaning we basically sort of faded in, kind of a weird one where it's like there's nothing, and then all of a sudden we started fading in like this, right? like, and all of a sudden there's a thing there. Right? And we're slowing down and whatever the fuck that is. Then it's like, you could theoretically say then that there isn't going to be a center, but then we don't know which is the problem. Like, for our relative area scale, there isn't. But then it's like, right, and then you scale that up, and then what happens? You might find out that there's enough of that there might be a theoretical center. Again, we don't have that information. We can't possibly know because, of course, we don't have other universes and whatever else might be around us and everything else seen and used as information to try and see if whether or not there might genuinely still be a theoretical center. All right? Now, people don't like the idea of a center of a universe. I don't really ever care. I never really ever care about that. It's like, if you look at anything that they're saying, it's like, yeah, no, except if you want to look at anything like that way, sure, but there's a theoretical center. I know you don't like that. It's like, no, because this paradoxical way of thinking, I'm like, no. Okay, so let me just take this real quick. You say everything sprang up from a given point. Okay, cool. So then you're going to the causal set. No, but even then, there's still a possibility. Yeah, right. No, okay, sure. And it doesn't change that the universe currently, right now, has a theoretical gravitational center somewhere. She might not like, but it does. It should have that. Again, I don't care if you like it or not. You know what I'm saying is true. There has to be a point in which all things being equal, all mass and gravity is balanced between this point in your entire universe. And that's if there is nothing else out there. Right? It'd be nice if you could figure that out. Because, like, no, we're going to use the models. Because there is no center. This is the problem I have. We're going to use a model that we're the center of the universe. And we can balance every fucking bit of our universe off of us being the center. And I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, sure. Right. Yeah, but, like, that's not true. Right? It wouldn't be true. It's just gravity happens to be so weak after a point that you can't really say that you can measure it properly. That's the problem. That means you get special relativity in this little area where it's so overwhelming as this cup of coffee is now so heavy and different relative to something else way over there that you can't really know. You don't like that. But that's really just all it is. Right? But that's what that is. Same thing, unfortunately, with anything else. You get electromagnetic, well, same thing. Get nuclear, same thing. You can't go outside of your universe, but then they're like, no, there's these discrepancies of the mass and the constants of our gravity and all this. And so these little weird bubbles here suggest that maybe there's an outside. Okay. Because you're the center of the universe. And you for sure are able to measure properly. These discrepancies mean. I'm like, I'm calling into question your bullshit because it's pretty obvious I can easily logic your ass out. Like, can you account for that problem? Can you? No. No, obviously not. And it's like, yeah, clearly. I know. They don't know. The layman people don't know. And that's why truth is stranger than fiction. Truth is stranger than fiction. Truth kind of sucks. It's like, look, it kind of sucks, but it's technically speaking possible that there could be one. And in fact, it's a little bit more than just technically. It could very well be that there is. It's just very difficult for us to be able to figure that out. And in fact, if anything, if we could figure it out, it would take so long and so much time and so much effort that it would be a really fucking stupid endeavor to do. Because of how big it is, because of how fucking small these little things are, and now all the rest of it, it would make no real sense to try, right? And yet we're going backwards and we're going, oh yeah, no, the Big Bang, and this is how it works, and all the rest. If it all expanded for... I'm saying, yeah, no, but that definitely means there's a center. You know what I mean? Like, that's the problem with the expansion of a paradoxical recursive, regardless of how you look at it. That means there's a point which is, like, dead. You know what I mean? Just doesn't have any movement, doesn't have this, doesn't have that, doesn't have anything. It was all balanced off of that in the center. Everything expanded away from that. If you wanted to call it like a expansion, right? Like a fucking explosion from like a supernova or some shit, which isn't really how that works, but that does mean, however, that there is one. And that's even if you looked at it as a multi-dimensional ball. Or even, it was spinning still somehow. Which I always laugh at that one. They're going into like, it's a donut, it was spinning the entire time. It's toroidal. It's now a shadow. It's a shadow, guys. Yeah, from your one singular perspective over here. I mean, like, imagine if we could do a time thing. If we could view it in a time thing. Imagine if we could do it in a fifth-dimensional time thing. Like, come on. Every time I look at people, on this one, I'm like, the layman's answer makes sense, and, for what it's worth, it's a great answer for most people, until you have to get into really complicated physics and math. And then the truth becomes a lot more murky. You know what I mean? Like, it really does. And they're like, no, let him talk as if he knows something. Let him say things that makes it seem like we don't know what we're doing. Let him imagine as if he's correct with his paradoxical logic. As if anything that he says is true. You might be good with these ideas and concepts, but there's nothing that you think of like this that is correct. Let them talk. Let them talk. I'm just going to do it to them real fast. Let them talk over there. Can they out-argue me on that one? You know what I mean? I want to hear their arguments on that. Like, for real. Like, I really do. Because, like, I've heard every argument that they've ever made. Like, even the membrane. It's a flat membrane! Flat? I mean, I guess from our perspective. It broke there. They squeezed the cup, and then it broke. Ah! There are no such thing as dimensions! Pretty sure we use dimensions for what it's worth. Don't interrupt over there. Programming. All the time. We use fourth dimensional programming all the time, don't we? Time, this, that, all that. Down the line. Sequencing, right? Shut up over there. I'm trying to think of my way out of this. Shut up over there, whoever you are. Where are you? You bitchy bitch. Why must you say things? Meanwhile, Oh, we live in a 3.5 dimension, technically speaking. We plan for the future. We can annoy ourselves with this idea and concept of what could be. But we really view things three-dimensionally as a static. But that's obviously not what it is. You know what I mean? Fourth dimension means things move. That's how that works. I.e., because we have momenta, things are not absolute zero. Clearly, there's a fourth dimension. It's not even getting into fifth. Not even getting into how third dimensional the fourth dimension is. Because there's the past, there's the future, and then the current experience. Right? Except the fourth dimension is like a third dimension. It's static, it's fixed. Which then means, if you look at it like that, that turns it into, what now? A hyper-determined world. Right! We just can't imagine being that way because, of course, things are so difficult for us to comprehend how all the little moving parts work together. How many different choices, this, that, everything that's said, done, more, is statically fixed to it. Except anything that's in the fourth dimension understands that there's a fifth dimension that can view it and its static and influence it, right? Which then turns it into what's a conscious awareness of a view that ultimately changes a third-dimensional fourth dimension and a fourth-dimensional third dimension. Which is a weird way of saying the third dimension that we live in can be influenced by time in a fifth-dimensional manner. Which we happen to exist in a fifth-dimensional aspect like that as a conscious awareness. Question mark? Again, truth stranger than fiction. The truth is, there very well is a center. We just don't know how or where it is. It's hard for us to conceptualize that. It doesn't even need to be dimensional. There has to be a third dimensional way of looking at that. No, third dimensional point. It's just going to be really hard for us to see it because it's like, well, it would look like an absolute 0 point. You know what I mean? Like an absolute 0 point to us would look like a center of the universe. You know what I mean? It can't move. It can't do it. Everything's balanced. All of the forces are balanced relative to everything in the universe to that one point. That's how you get a center of the universe for our third dimensional view. Meanwhile, fourth dimensional view, yeah, it's right there. Meanwhile, fifth dimensional view, yeah, and it's moving over there. And a sixth dimensional view, and it's going to go do these things. Right? Because it then got from that sixth dimension a way to see all that it will do. Some people don't really understand dimensional thoughts. But that's truth stranger than fiction kind of stuff. Alrighty. Like, subscribe, all that. Bye.